So let's work on the facing first. I'm gonna complete the entire facing first before I attach it onto the bodice. That means connecting at the joint seam for the front and the back. And I'm gonna, wait, let's orient this way. Okay, like this. This is the two front, and the right sides are facing me. Now I'm gonna take the back side and face the right sides of each other together. Pin the shoulder. This is the shoulder area, but it's on the inside. You can stitch one first and then do the other. I'm just gonna pin them both so that I can just do one big stitch. And the edges are pretty straight. I don't need to do too many pins. Remember, we're jumping back to 1/2 inch seam allowance here. And then, I'm not even gonna pull out my fabric. I'm just gonna continue.
Saves you thread.
Saves you from having to pull and then cut the thread and snip. That's all clean.
Whoa.
Nice and clean. Take it to your iron, press it nicely open. I'm not gonna do that right now. I'm just gonna use my fingers. But please use the iron. The iron will allow it to, it makes it easier for you to sew so that the seam allowance is not flopping while you're sewing it. Okay. Now you can either do it one or two ways. Do the collar first and then do the center front, or do the center front and then do the collar. So you have all three pieces. I'll let you decide the order in which you want to do it. I'm going to do the collar first and then I'll do the facing after. Now, the confusing part is definitely how to put the sandwich of the collar sandwich together. You have your two layers here, and you have this layer that you want it to be right in between. The underside, you should have the stitch line to kind of help you, the understitch to tell you where the undercollar is. It's going to be facing the actual bodice. So take your notches and line them up. My undercollar is facing my bodice. Pin. You know what? Before I do that, I'm going to do a basting stitch because I don't like that this is flopping around. I'm going to do a basting stitch that is about 1/8 away from the edge. This is just so that it's not moving as I'm pinning it in place. Back to the pinning. Undercolor here. Let me give myself a center back notch. I don't know a center back notch here. Line it up at the center back first. This is where you're gonna probably need to use tons and tons of pins because you're dealing with lots and lots of layers. Let me give myself a notch here too. So what I'm doing is I'm just giving myself a center back notch. I didn't add that. And I'm measuring it half mark. The halfway mark should be my center back. Right sides facing. So now I have my bodice, my collar. I'm going to take my facing, and the right side of the facing is going to face the right side of the collar. Okay? So that's 3 layers. Moving on to the shoulder. I have my shoulder notch. I have my shoulder seam. match that up. You'll notice that when you get to the center front edge, the center front is 1 inch longer than the actual collar because we added the extension to create an overlap for the center front. We don't necessarily need the collar to overlap, we just need the center front line of the bodice to overlap. So it's gonna be about 1 inch, actually it should be 1 inch shorter. And I highly encourage you guys to do a hand basting to keep all the layers together. Do a hand basting, and it could just be like a very simple hand basting, but what you want to do is make sure all of the layers are in place and it's not shifting around because you're working with a very small seam allowance with lots and lots of material. So do a hand basting. I am just gonna do pins, but do a hand basting that is within the seam allowance, or I mean you can do it on the seam allowance, it really doesn't matter because you're gonna probably undo the stitching anyway. I don't recommend doing a machine basting just because it's probably gonna move around under the machine. So do a hand basting and then we're ready to sew. Okay, now to sew, doesn't matter which side is facing up or down. You want to start off with the center first. So do from the center, stitch all the way to one edge, do your back stitch, flip it over, and do the other side. That way, all of the layers that you're working with are not zhuzhing and moving, and if you did from one edge to the other, it's more likely that it's going to shift around. So doing it from the center front will kind of help eliminate that issue. As close to the center as I can get. And your seam allowance is 1/4 inch. So do very, very slowly, okay, because there's a lot of layers, and you want to make sure as you're stitching that you're not forgetting any layers behind. So as you're going, I mean, you're going to have pins, and you're going to have to slowly move them anyway. But do it very, very slowly. Back stitch. Make sure my collar is in. Yes, it is. Barely. I almost lost it right here. But I did it. Okay. I'm gonna do the other side. Take your time on this. You don't want to mess up and then have to redo it, and you're working with such a small seam allowance that the edges are going to be like fraying and unraveling, so it becomes a whole mess. So first time around is usually the best to make it clean and neat. See that all my layers are in. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go. And yes, my collar is intact. It doesn't look too terrible. Now, before we move on to the next thing, we're gonna need to. Oh, see, look, this doesn't look too good. There's a little bit of a puckering here. I'm gonna fix that. Everywhere else looks good. This little area, I'm just gonna undo that part. Yep, right there. Straighten out that pleat. Make the fabric lay nice, and then just do a back stitch in that area only. seam allowances, we're gonna clip, always clip around curves to help it open, when you press it, open nicely. I usually just snip it about an inch apart. I don't like to do it too close together because when you have to redo it, there's just so many clips that it's just too open. So I usually just do it about an inch apart. And then we're gonna do an understitch. Oh, see, that's why you iron it. We're gonna do an understitch on the side of the facing. So all of these seam allowance, pull it towards the facing. And I'm only gonna do the understitch right where the collar starts. I don't need to go all the way to the edge. That is the understitch. That looks good. Now I'm gonna take it to the iron and press it. But I'm not gonna go to the iron, but you guys go to the iron. Go to the iron, press it. Make sure it's all nice and flat. Okay, when you're done with all of that, it should lay nicely onto itself. Last thing, well, two more things actually. We're gonna need to finish the center front. So to finish the center front, I'm gonna flip it backwards. Line up the edge. This part is super easy. Line up the edge, and this is a trick that I learned. Fold the seam allowance down on the side of the facing. Fold the seam allowance down so that when you stitch your edge,
You stitching with the 1 inch?
no, half inch.
Okay.
So the 1 inch is just where our center front is, but our seam allowance is half of an inch.
Okay.
And this extra space in the middle is actually what allows it to overlap. I'll show you guys.
Okay. That was if you wanted the closure.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Like if you wanted to add buttons, zippers are different. Zippers, you don't necessarily need this much overlap.
Okay.
My edges are not aligned because I didn't have this bodice when I was doing the facing, so I had to use a different bodice. But yours should align, and if it doesn't, just trim it off. Alright. So now, when you flip it over, top edge, because you stitched it down with the seam allowance pressed in, it kind of helps the outer layer roll nicely over. Yeah. And it should be just half of an inch distance here. When you stitch the other side, it'll overlap, and the total overlap is 1 inch, but the center front edge meets up right at the collar point, or the collar where it meets the joint seam. So that's the overlap. I'm not gonna do this side, but I want to show you guys something else that you need to do.
Do you have to finish the facing?
Yes, you would. I'm not gonna require you guys to finish the facing for this one, but we're gonna test out the overlap for the next group assignments.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
But for this one, you don't need to.
Okay, sounds good. I was like, I have no idea what you're doing with that then.
Well, what I'm doing is, if you just have the facing in like this, and you're like taking it on and off, the facing kind of just like flaps out.
Yeah.
So let's put that away by tacking it onto the seam. And we're gonna use the ditch of the shoulder seam to hold it in place. So you could do it one or two ways. You can hand stitch it. If you really didn't want to see the top stitch here, just take a hand needle and just sew this and tack it into
To the
place.
seam allowance? Okay.
I'm gonna take the machine and do it the lazy way. I think this is the lazy way, but it's not the most cleanest because you still see it. But to try to hide it away as best as you can, stitch right in the ditch. So this is that ditch stitch. Remember what we were doing for that practice? We're stitching it right in that seam so that it kind of hides it. It doesn't have to be too big. Half of an inch is good. Just remember to do a back stitch so that it doesn't unravel. And on the bottom, it didn't capture, or it didn't tack the whole thing. I did it too close to the edge here. But it keeps it in place, so it's not like flapping about.
And if
Yeah.
you wanted to line up seams, you could just pin that.
Yes. If you didn't want it to be off seam like that, you would use a pin and do it nice and neat. But yeah, this is the facing attachment, the collar attachment. I'm not gonna finish this side so you guys can see it, but this side is the finished side. So I will leave the sample up here. You guys refer to it, but you will need to do it on both sides. Okay. Cool. All right. Good luck, guys. Collar attachment is the hardest.